Hello there, Inky Fingers here. Now in my last video I went through a generalised description of the equipment I use for painting and drawing things in the studio and drawing things outside, because they are widely different, the equipment. So today I'm going to have a quick overview of the pens I use, the fountain pens. Now these are fountain pens because fountain pens outside are far more practical than using bottled ink or dipping pens or even fine liners. Fountain pens are much more organic. So when you're doing expressive or quick sketches out of doors, that's, in my opinion, what you want. Something organic, something quick, something that can give various thicknesses of lines with one pen and is generally non-messy. So I'm going to show the pens I use, draw some lines, and just quickly explain of why I use them. Now the thing about fountain pens is that they're so personal. Some people may pick a fountain pen up, use it and think, oh, this is not for me, I can't use it, it's not very good. Yet another artist could pick the same pen up and think it's the bee's knees. They could say, this is the only fountain pen I need, it's perfect. They're so personal. Each fountain pen has its own characteristics, so it's just a matter of going through different pens until you find something that's really suitable for your needs. Now the pens I have is, we have here the Juke 551 Fude pens, the Confucius pen. We have the Pilot Kakuno, which has got an extra fine nib. We have the Lamy Safari, which has an extra fine nib. We've got the Pilot Parallel pen with the 1.5mm nib. We have a very inexpensive sub £10 fountain pen off eBay. It's a fine Fude nib. And then we've got the Pentel pocket brush. It's not a fountain pen, but we can still draw with it. We can still paint architecture with it. So these are the pens that I use. I don't use all of them. I didn't obviously I didn't buy them all at the same time. So certain pens do supersede other pens now. So I'm just going to go through these pens, little demonstrations of what the nibs are like, how they operate, how they behave, and with my views on why I bought them and if I really use them. So when I am outside drawing anything, usually architecture, but it could be anything, I do tend to use just drawing pads. This is a smooth heavyweight, which really show the value of the marks, because it is these nibs, because it is a very smooth paper. So this will be our test piece, our test paper. It's nice and white. Well, it's slightly off white. So first, my first pen was the Lamy Safari, simply because everyone uses one. Everyone's got one. They tend to be one of the best inexpensive urban sketching pens out there. Made in Germany, fantastic quality. I bought one of the proprietary cartridge things with it, instead of using just the regular cartridge. Now this is an extra fine nib, but as it's made in Germany, you find that European nibs are far more generous in size than, say, for example, the Pilot pens, which are Japanese. Now also, the weight of a pen is paramount. You don't want anything that's too bulky. So the Lamy, we can see it's only 17 grams. Very very, very lightweight. So you can hold it in your hand and you can do a lot of things with it. So one thing about the Lamy is that it's renowned for its smoothness. It doesn't really matter what you do, you pretty much get a nice solid line. Very, 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 very nice. Now I got this pen for about £20 UK pounds, which is absolutely astounding value for money for what you want for an urban sketching pen. But even as I said, this is an extra fine nib. The lines it gives, I would say, looks more like a medium nib in other countries. It's not really that fine. You can use it the opposite way around and try it that way, but as you see, it doesn't really work that well when it's upside down. Some pens do work well that way, some pens don't. I found the Lamy doesn't, but it just works really well. Very, very smooth. The second pen I bought was a Fude pen. Now this is the cheap sub £10 one I got off eBay. It's unbranded. It's a very, very fine Fude nib, as you can see. Very, 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 very small. And again, they came with it. They like so you don't have to use cartridges. You can use this converter. Now, as a Fude pen, it gives wider lines. Unbranded, we'll call this. And as you can see instantly that the Fude pen gives much thicker lines because of the bent nib. Now with this, we can put it upside down and get much, much, much finer lines. So it's very versatile for doing thin lines. But if you want something that's going to be, you need the thickness, then of course it's very, very easy. Say windows, for example. It's so easy to fill larger areas up with a Fude pen. So because of that, turn it upside down, it's an extremely versatile pen. The only problem with this pen is that even though I'm using unclogging ink, this does sort of dry up a lot quicker than the other pens. But for the price, you can't grumble. So that's the unbranded pen. That was the second pen, which I do actually use quite a lot. The third pen I bought was the Pilot Kakuno. Now I bought this simply because of the on the web people were saying about the extraordinarily fine point. And we can see here just how absolutely fine this point is. Now compared, we'll just do something down here. Sorry about that. I've just drawn this bit and the camera wasn't even on. So to recap, that because this the nib on this is a Japanese nib, and the Japanese extra fine nib is extra fine, unlike the European extra fine nibs, which is more like, I would say, a medium nib. The Kakuno gives extremely fine lines, and if you're an urban sketcher that likes or prefers more detail in your sketches, more finer work, then the Kakuno might just be the pen for you. There's very fine lines in cross-hatching. So it's very good for environmental stuff where you might have a building with trees around it. And this pen cost about 20 UK pounds. And it comes with one of the proprietary ink reservoirs, so you don't have to keep on buying the normal ink cartridges. Now I used to use this, I still do use it, but not as much, but I used to use this a lot for the fine detail work. Now this pen was replaced by this pen. This is the Pilot Parallel pen. As we can see, if we can, Pilot Parallel pen. Now this is unusual because it's not a fountain pen. It's a screw thread. Is that the Pilot Parallel pens simply have two plates of metal, you can see, together. And it doesn't have a point, it has a bevel, it's like a flat edge. This is 1.5mm across, and they go all the way up to I think about 6mm, and they're basically the primarily for calligraphy, but they work extraordinarily well for urban sketching. Now once again, we'll have a look at this. Now this just uses the old cartridges, standard cartridges, but of course that doesn't mean to say that this is no good, because you just, when it's empty, you just fill it up with the ink, put a syringe in, fill it up with ink, pop it back in, and you're good to go. So nothing needs to get thrown out. Now this pen, we can see if we use the edge, we can get some very nice, very fine lines. and it flows, the ink flows beautifully. But the beauty of it is, depends on how you hold it, we can get some really nice thick lines to thin lines, depending how you hold it. So it becomes extremely versatile for outdoors if you're using outdoors. And we can fill in dark areas very, very quickly. Now this pen cost around £10. They're very inexpensive, but they work absolutely wonders for going outside and doing some urban sketching. It's not a one-trick pony. Now the final fountain pen that I bought was the Juke 551 Confucius. Now this is quite a hefty pen. It's made out of bamboo and metal, and we have to measure weight because this is for a pen. You see, it is 66 grams in weight, which is rather heavy for a fountain pen. So the weight may be an issue for some people. And one thing you cannot do with this pen is when you're using it to put the top on the other end. Some people like doing that, but it's just completely unbalanced. So you've got to leave it off and put this somewhere safe. But the Confucius I like because it's a Fude pen. You can see it's got 3 strips of metal to make the nib up. The nib is at quite an angle. It is got a proprietary reservoir system, which is good. And what's really nice about this is that you can get really thick lines when you use the full width of the pen, but depending on how you hold it, you can also get really thin lines. It just takes a little bit of use to get used to the pen. Now this pen is not very good for just like smaller sized pictures. It is just too bulky. But for larger things, it's absolutely fantastic. And you can really do some nice sketches very quickly with this pen because of the size of the nib. So it's extraordinarily versatile. Now this was, I got this off eBay, someone was selling it as new, but they sold it for about 17-18 pounds, UK pounds. But normally I think these are around 30-35 pounds. It is more expensive, but it flows nice. It's very versatile, getting fine lines to thick lines in one stroke, and you can get really bold work done very quickly with the Confucius pen. And finally, now this isn't a fountain pen, it's a brush pen, Pentel Pocket brush pen, which just consists of a nylon fiber tip. This isn't one thick nib, it's actually, I don't think you can't really see, but this is just like a brush, a nylon brush. Hundreds and hundreds of individual little pieces of nylon to make up the tip. Again, it's got use cartridges. This is the original Pentel ink cartridge that came with it. Obviously the original ink was used, so you just take it out, refill it with the ink brand you use, put it back in, and there's no waste, no landfill. And you hear of people who've bought these pens and like 15 years down the line they still work absolutely perfectly. But this does give beautiful lines. From incredibly fine lines up to really thick lines. Depends on how hard you put the brush down, the pressure, and of course it just flows. It's a fantastic pen. Now I use this pen primarily for when you've done a building and you want some dark shadows. For example, you've got windows and you just want them black. This is very quick just to fill the windows in. It's much quicker than using anything else, in my opinion. Now this pen, it costs about £12, so it's not expensive. They don't really wear out. It's made in Japan, and it's quality through and through. So that's the pens that I use when I go out sketching on location. Each one has its own positives and each one has its own weaknesses. They all have different characters, and now I have all these pens and use them, then there are one or two that I don't really use much anymore. There's namely the Kakuno, because this, the Pilot Parallel pen, gives a finer line as this, but it's more versatile. I don't use the Lamy that often now, because this pen can give the same sort of lines as this, but this, being a Fude pen, is more versatile. And the unbranded pen, Fude pen, it's just a regular pen. But it's fun to use. It gives some good lines, and it's really fun to use. So the only thing I don't like about it is that for some reason it does tend to clog up a little bit more. Now in future videos you will see me do little tutorials, whatever the subject matter may be, and you will see me using different pens. So you will get to see them actually in operation, doing something practical. And especially when I do videos out of doors, on location. Because remember, these pens are used for outdoors. Indoor stuff, studio stuff, I use different pens entirely. These are just more convenient when used outside. So there you go. Those are the pens I use. And even though some of them I've put more into the background, they might not get used as often as they did because of newer pens, even still each pen is still useful for certain things. For example, the pilot Kakuno, I said that I didn't really use that often because of other pens, but I had to use it. I've just done this picture, which is a little picture of staves, and I used the pilot Kakuno to draw it because this is such a small picture. It's less than A4. There's a hell of an amount of detail in this picture. This very small extra fine nib of the Kakuno was perfect for it. So all pens still have a use, and I hope that the simple demonstration of what these pens do, if any of these pens take a fancy to anyone, you can see what sort of marks they actually make and whether you would think that they would be good for you or not. Now on my next video, what I'll be doing is showing you how to draw and paint in watercolour. Pretty much I would say the simplest way to paint a brick wall, a large scale brick wall, from a slightly more of a distance. It's quite simple and the effect is fantastic. So until then, I'll say goodbye. So until next time, goodbye.